Zionist propagandists have long sought to demonize Arabs and Muslims, portraying them as historically rabid oppressors of Jews. The medieval dhimmi system is often cited as proof. But how did Jews actually live under Islamic rule 1,000 years ago? And how does that compare to how Palestinians live under Israeli rule today? In the Byzantine Empire, Jews faced comprehensive legal restrictions that touched every aspect of life. The Emperor Justinian enacted draconian anti-Jewish legislation, and the Emperor Heraclius escalated imperial policy to include forced conversions of Jews. The Islamic conquest dramatically shifted this reality. The new Islamic polities introduced the dhimmi system. Jews were guaranteed the freedom to practice their religion, to maintain their synagogues, and to be secure in their lives and property, in exchange for paying a special poll tax known as the jizya. However, dhimmis were also subject to restrictions that placed them in a second-class position relative to Muslim citizens. Yet the Caliphate, which was still majority Christian in the 9th century, didn't fall apart because the dhimmi system resulted in lower taxes and more religious freedom and autonomy than the Roman system it replaced. The medieval dhimmi system did not meet modern standards of equality before the law. But does Israel treat Palestinian Arabs better than the medieval Islamic Caliphate treated Jews? Let's compare the 9th century Caliphates to the 21st century Israeli-occupied West Bank and find out. In both the Abbasid Caliphate, centered in Baghdad, and the Umayyad Emirate in Spain, Jews enjoyed recognized legal rights to purchase, own, and inherit property on broadly similar private law terms as Muslims. Their homes, shops, and farmland were protected in Islamic courts. Jews and Christians could, and routinely did, sign contracts with Muslims, and their contracts were enforceable under the law. While new synagogues and churches faced restrictions on construction or expansion, private property itself was secure and legally safeguarded. In Israeli-controlled Area C, about 60% of the West Bank, Palestinians are effectively barred from purchasing, improving, or expanding any property, private, civic, or religious. Between 2016 and 2021, less than 1% of building permit requests were approved. Since October 2023, there have been 0 approvals. In 2025, Israeli authorities demolished 1,288 Palestinian structures in the first 9 months, averaging 4.7 demolitions per day. In addition, Palestinian private property is stolen, and Palestinians are driven out of their homes and farmland by religious fanatics in the settler movement with the support of the state. There were an average of 4 incidents of settler violence per day in the last year. No Palestinian is safe in their home, nor is their private property secure. Everyone within the 9th century Caliphate, Muslim and dhimmi alike, enjoyed freedom of movement, trade, and residence across the empire's vast territories. Jewish merchants, scholars, and doctors were integral to the Caliphate's economy and administration, and were able to travel freely from Spain to Persia. By contrast, Palestinians in the West Bank live under an apartheid system of military travel permits, walls, and checkpoints. Their towns and villages are carved into areas A, B, and C, encircled by segregated Israeli settlements, settler-only roads, and military zones. All major Palestinian cities are fragmented by a web of checkpoints and roadblocks that can seal them off without warning. Special Israeli military permits are required to reach their holy places in East Jerusalem, permits that are rarely granted and easily revoked. In the 9th century Islamic world, the dhimmi system guaranteed Jews and Christians freedom of worship and protection under the law. As long as they paid the jizya tax, they were generally left unmolested. Sectarian violence inside the Caliphate was not between Muslims and non-Muslims, but among rival schools of Islam: the rationalists, the traditionalists, the Shia, and the Kharijites. The exception was the 14-year reign of Abbasid Caliph al-Mutawakkil, from 847 to 861 CE. He implemented harsh measures against Jews and Christians, as well as brutally repressing rationalist Mu'tazila and Shia Muslims. In Islamic Spain, meanwhile, 9th century Jewish communities enjoyed a long era of religious freedom and legal security, conditions that paved the way for the celebrated golden age of Iberian Jewry in the 10th and 11th centuries. The situation is very different today under Israeli rule. A 2017 Haaretz review found that 53 mosques, churches, and monasteries were desecrated in Israel and the West Bank by Jewish zealots, with only 9 indictments filed by the Israeli government, and the situation is even worse today. Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Israeli Minister of National Security for years, displayed a portrait of Baruch Goldstein in his living room. Goldstein was the terrorist who in 1994 murdered 29 Muslim worshippers in the Cave of the Patriarchs and wounded 125 others. That made him a hero to Israel's Minister of National Security. Christians are spat on in the streets of Jerusalem, and religious clerics wearing crosses are threatened with physical violence. The desecration of holy sites and harassment of Christians and Muslims has become a normalized routine. At the same time, the majority of Palestinian Christian and Muslim worshippers are regularly denied access to their holy sites. So there you have it. The country that claims to be a beacon of Western democratic values is, by every measure of rights, freedom, and security, far worse toward its Arab subjects than medieval Arab states were toward Jews. Shockingly, 1,000 years ago, Jews under theocratic Muslim rule lived with greater protection of property, faith, and movement than Palestinians do under Israeli rule today. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons if you would like to see more content like this.